Welcome to our online teaching and learning program. This is English language for SS2. My name is Deborah Onobiro. In our previous classes, we've looked at part of speech. We've considered the noun, the verb, the adjectives, the adverbs, and so on. We went on to look at phrases and types of phrases. We've looked at clauses and types of clauses. But for the purpose of our online learning, we are going to start with clauses all over again so that we will refresh our memory, we will relearn what we have learned in case we have forgotten before we move on to other topics. So remember that we said a clause is a grammatical unit that has a finite verb. That is, the clause can have a subject and a predicate. The subject can be a group of words or a word, just a noun, about whom something is said. The predicate is the part of the sentence which says something about the subject. For example, Mary slapped the boy twice. Mary is the subject. Slap the boy twice is the predicate. Now, we have main clauses and subordinate clauses. An independent clause is also known as the main clause. And this is the type that can stand on its own. An independent clause is also known as the main clause. This is the type of clause that can stand on its own because it makes complete sense. It has meaning. Whereas a subordinate clause, called the dependent clause, cannot stand on its own because it does not make complete meaning, doesn't make complete sense. It has to depend on the main clause to be able to convey meaning. It has to depend on the main clause to be able to convey meaning. This is why it is called a dependent or a subordinating clause. So we've said again that a clause has a finite verb. A clause may have a subject and a predicate. And we said that there are two types now. The independent clause, which is known as main clause, and the subordinating clause, which is known as the dependent clause. Let's take an example of a sentence that will contain both a subordinating clause and a main clause. For instance, if we say, if I travel to Bocos this morning, if I travel to Bocos this morning, I will call on my uncle. If I travel to Bocos this morning, I will call on my uncle. If I travel to Bocos this morning is the subordinating clause. It cannot stand on its own. I will call on my uncle is the main clause because it can stand on its own. The relationship between these clauses is that the first, the subordinating clause, cannot stand on its own. It has to depend on the second one, the main clause, without which it will not have made complete sense. So the first one cannot stand on its own, but the second one, I will call on my uncle, can stand on its own. So the first one depends on the second one to make complete sense. Let's take some more examples. The men came. The men came, saw the food, and ate it. Now, the men came is the main clause. Saw the food is also a main clause. And ate it is a subordinating clause. It cannot stand on its own. If I just tell you and ate it, you will say, and ate what? Because it will make complete meaning on its own. So, the men came, the men saw the food. These are main clauses. And ate it is a subordinating clause. It cannot stand on its own. Okay, so these are examples of main clauses and subordinating clauses. This you have to bear in mind for subsequent classes. You need to remember main clauses and subordinating clauses. Main clauses can stand on its own, subordinating clauses cannot. So quickly, before we conclude the lesson for today, let's look at types of clauses, because in our subsequent classes we will be taking each type of clause and then we will look at the grammatical name and its function in sentences. We will take the type of clause, we will look at its grammatical name and its function in sentences. So what are the types of clauses that we have? Quickly, we have the adverbial clause, which we will be starting with, the adverbial clause. Then we have the adjectival clause. Then we have the noun clause. We have the noun clause. These are the clauses we will be looking at in our subsequent classes. We'll be taking each one after the other. So this is it for grammar for SS2 for today. For classwork, I want you to get your notes and your pen and write down 5 main clauses and 5 subordinate clauses for me. Please make sure that your parent or your uncle, your sister, your auntie bring in your notebooks on Friday and they come and pick it up on Monday, so that I'll be able to mark it over the weekend and then you get your books back so you use them throughout the week. So I hope you are staying safe. Remember, COVID-19 is real. Stay safe and God bless you.